Even with all of the minimalism utilized in Houseki no Kuni, there is one defining feature that impacts the story aesthetically, narratively, and thematically. The moon. A common assignment in primary school is looking up and keeping track of the moon across a month's time. Waxing refers to when the moon fills from the right side, while waning is when the moon fills from the left side. And a crescent is less than halfway filled, while gibbous is more than halfway filled. The median of manga leads to very rare depictions of the new moon because it essentially blends into the background. But on the other hand, the lack of color makes the sun sometimes look like the full moon. We also have other aspects associated with the moon, as it is used in reflections, especially in volume 2 because of Foss's journey to the sea, or the fact that we never see the moon during the day, as it would have the same problem as the new moon would on a dark background. The night is inherently tied with Cinnabar, and thus the moon is tied to their suffering, as the first fight that Foss is involved in takes place at sundown, and the moon creates this focal point of the background, especially in a series where the stars don't really shine that much in the night sky. The moon traps Cinnabar. It puts the spotlight on their self-inflicted suffering. It shows the hypocrisy of their desires. Ichikawa purposely sets this up with chapter 1, as the only time that we see the sky with a dark background is in reference to the Lunarians. But here we see every time that Cinnabar is referenced, the sky is also dark because they pose the same level of danger. If you are taken, or if you get venom on you, you will be forgotten, you will be scraped away, you will be left behind. Cinnabar's longing and emphasis on the moon is transferred over to Foss when Foss decides to take this burden for the rest of the series. Within the first half of the story, there is not a single appearance of the waxing gibbous moon out of roughly 37 shots. Because of the existence of multiple moons in the story of Houseki no Kuni, Ichikawa is able to shift between cycles, often by swapping different moons, as we don't really know the orientation of them, other than that they don't really seem to be at the same distance away from Earth. The Lunarians reside in the closest one, which is safe to say is the original moon because of its size and proximity to Earth. The gibbous is this awkward period where we aren't completely lacking, but aren't completely full either. With something like the crescent moon, we can make the claim that we either just begun or are close to ending, but you can't equate the reverse with the gibbous. People care more about those moments at the beginning and end, but not the middle, not the meat. Hell, I even completely skipped the first quarter and the third quarter moon phases myself for this video. And even though Ichikawa doesn't show us the waxing gibbous, we can then place it onto Foss themselves to fill that role, as things are imperfect in this first half. We could treat the first 300 years as Foss's new moon phase, as it is blank to both us and Foss. The start of the series is the waxing crescent, where Foss's ideals are still really pure. Then the waxing gibbous comes into full effect in the pain that Foss has by not completing the task they imposed on themselves, and Cinnabar, and a multitude of others. The buildup stems from Cinnabar's longing to be abducted from this world, and Foss's lack of success in alleviating that need as the pressure continues to pile until we hit the full moon. Did you know that the average distance to the moon from the Earth is about 360,000 kilometers? Which is pretty far, but you know what's much closer? We're about 3,000 subscribers away to get to 10,000 sufferers so that we can be by Foss's side. Please, if you enjoyed what you've seen so far and like Houseki no Kuni, maybe check to see if you've hit that button or not. I'll find you a job only you can do. I'll do it. And it'll be more fun than night patrol. The fruition of all this setup. The full moon does pop up in the second half of volume 1, as it is the transference from Cinnabar's deprecation to Foss's ambition. Ichikawa pokes fun of this fullness as it is supposed to symbolize completion, abundance, and transformation. Here we go from 4 moons to 2 moons to 1 moon in Volume 1, showing that the multiplicity effect of the moons, whether they're full or not, doesn't mean much. Cinnabar's plea may be strong, but time will make it insignificant to Cinnabar and to Foss. Cinnabar doesn't really want to go to the moon, as they just want to find a place to feel useful. Foss doesn't really want to help Cinnabar, as they just pity the poor state that the gem has put themselves in. The first full moon appearance is full of innocence and the waning of that ignorance. The second full moon's appearance, in Volume 5, is full of misunderstanding, with Chapter 36, the end of the volume that has the bulk of the full moons, when Foss goes to see Cinnabar after so long. Even though we see the full moons in this chapter, when Cinnabar talks about teaming up, the full moon is actually cut off by the page, evoking the same feeling that the Waning Crescent did in Chapter 2. Foss doesn't understand what Cinnabar truly wants, and never really does, but even if they want to hear Cinnabar's other side, if it conflicts with what Foss internally thinks, it is tossed aside as irrelevant. The third full moon appearance is full of clarity. Although we got a shot of the almost full moon in Chapter 50, it really is shown at the end of the conversation with the new Snail King and Foss with the speech bubble, "We intend to go to the moon" in Chapter 51, that lets the reader know that we are in a full moon state once again, because of how big that speech bubble is in comparison to the characters in that conversation. The range in Foss's face when coming to this realization that the thing that they should really be doing has been lingering around them this whole time in the back room is the actual destination. Think back to the first time you read the series, whenever it was. The moon itself is used as a high red flag because Cinnabar's desire is pretty suicidal, and we are disarmed that Foss would never actually end up there themselves. The red herring would have been that Cinnabar might end up there, but the chances of Foss themselves never crossed my mind. Just as the snails introduced the idea of betrayal for Foss, they also reintroduced the idea of the moon as a place and not just a concept. Volume 8 is on a timer. We go through the potential full lunar cycle in breakneck speed compared to any other volume, which is understandable because Foss is on a limit here. They only have 28 days because Cicada will come to pick Foss back up. On top of this, the full moon timer starts multiple chapters into the volume. It's interesting that Foss starts with Rutile, but it is foretold via the moon that Rutile would not join them, as the moon's reflection in the water is completely shattered, as well as the speech bubble is the opposite of the full moon that we saw behind Cinnabar's team-up panel, where the top here is actually cut off by the page, and suggests that neither end up taking Foss's side. Chapter 60 is really interesting in terms of lighting. Foss's face is never fully lit by the moonlight. Even if it does, the pearl's glow cuts through, showing the different facets that Foss will have to put up to get some of these gems to take their side. On top of that, the speech bubbles, where Foss lists the several gems they think that they have, has 4 of them with the half moon. If we divide the speech bubbles in half and then add the moon as well, we get 10 pieces, where 9 of them are lit up or on Foss's side, with the one that's still in the dark being Cinnabar. This stage of the lunar cycle is supposed to be one of rest and recovery before the whole process happens all over again. In Chapter 23, we get a crescent where Bort and Foss team up for the first time, and Bort is also the one that cuts the fullness of the Lunarian structure in Chapter 43 into smaller crescents as well. Volume 6 has the most amount of crescent panels, but it definitely does not have that sense of recovery of our poor protagonists, and more so a fallacy of safety. Foss tries to tell the others that they are fun and back to the old Foss when they are far from that reality. We also see one of my favorite transitions in Houseki with Chapter 40. Winter is coming, and Foss already had their freakout in the previous chapter of transporting Ant Art on top of Cairngorm. The sky cuts Foss's head, and we get Foss acknowledging their situation. This does go along with what Waning Crescent is surrendering to all that has happened that's outside of one's control. Don't let anyone know and wait for this right opportunity is what this dissolving crescent here symbolizes. The cool fact here is that the bottom lit moon is a common phenomenon that actually happens in nature. The Earth Earth's tilt sometimes points to the northern hemisphere and towards the sun, and the other times the southern hemisphere. Obviously, we're familiar with this phenomenon as that's how we get our seasons, but a byproduct of this actually changes the apparent path that the moon takes across the night sky, depending on when on Earth you look at it. When the crescent moon travels straight down the horizon around the winter time, you do get this U-shaped moon, which occurs maybe once or twice a year. As winter passes into spring and summer, the crescent shape slowly shifts towards the south, beginning to stand up on its end. Now, there's a lot of discrepancy on whether this makes the moon with its horns up a wet moon or a dry moon, but Ishikawa clearly depicts this in a bubbly, melting fashion, so all that hope is bottled up in this stage, which happens way too rarely in the series. If chapter 40 is when the waning crescent is about to reset the cycle, we can take a look at chapter 80 for that next reset where the moon flows out of control. We only really cover the first 50 chapters of Houseki no Kuni, but this next video focuses on how Foss orchestrated the fracture of the Lustrous society to make Kongo feel a very human emotion: betrayal.